Hey everyone, welcome back to another Explainer. I am so pumped you're here today because we're jumping into a really fascinating intersection of ideas. We're talking about our human cognitive limits, the strict, unyielding rules of physical space, and how mind-blowing technological breakthroughs are completely rewiring global logistics. We'll be looking at how things like capital efficiency and asset velocity are being revolutionized right now. It's honestly like putting together a giant puzzle, and seeing how it all connects is absolutely going to change how you look at progress.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We're kicking things off with one of the most famous, maybe even notorious, contrarian interview questions out there. It comes from Peter Thiel's seminal book, 0 to 1. He asks, what important truth do very few people agree with you on? It's a great question, isn't it? It instantly hooks you and pulls you out of your conventional mindset. It reminds us that while brilliant thinking is rare, having the guts to challenge accepted norms is even rarer. To really see into the future, we have to recognize where the present is fundamentally flawed.
And that brings us perfectly to the main theme of today's Explainer: human limitations versus technological leaps. You see, because you and I are physically limited by space and time, we often totally misjudge how efficiently we're actually moving matter around the world. We fall into this trap, let's call it the utilization illusion, where we confuse an asset just sitting around somewhere for true productive velocity. Today, we're going to examine how genuine technological leaps aren't just about tweaking things at the edges, they are absolutely crucial to overcoming our built-in human flaws and shattering that utilization illusion once and for all.
So, to get there, we've got a great roadmap for today. First, moving matter through space. Second, our flawed human intuition. Third, high-stakes chemical logistics. Fourth, the 0 to 1 shift. And finally, the smart tank revolution.
Part 1. Moving matter through space.
Consider this thought from Dr. Joe Dispenza. He says, the way you and I typically experience time is by moving our bodies through space. It sounds pretty simple, right? But the implications are massive. Think about it. If you want a glass of water, you have the thought, sure. But to actually close the gap between your chair and the kitchen, you have to move physical matter, your body, through space. And that inherently takes time. As Einstein proved, the ultimate speed limit for any physical matter is the speed of light. Anything slower than that takes time. In the logistics world, this means every single time a physical asset just sits in a depot, it's suffering from depot latency. Moving matter around the globe is strictly bound by the unyielding physics of reality.
Part 2. Our flawed human intuition.
Now, knowing that moving physical stuff is super complex and constrained, cognitive psychology actually tells us we are fundamentally terrible at planning for it. The Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman introduced a concept called YSIAT. It's an acronym for what you see is all there is. Basically, our brains create this focusing illusion. We give way too much weight to the handful of variables we can see right in front of us, and we totally ignore critical, unseen variables. In logistics, this cognitive blind spot is exactly what creates that utilization illusion. We see a tank out in the field and think, awesome, it's being highly utilized, while totally ignoring the invisible idle time and depot latency that is actively destroying our asset velocity.
So, the crucial point is, how do we actually overcome this built-in biological bias? Well, Kahneman points to a treatment called reference class forecasting, developed by Bent Flyberg. Instead of trusting our gut feelings about cycle times, which are almost always wrong, we have to step outside of ourselves. It's a three-step process. Step 1, identify a reference class. Step 2, obtain baseline statistics. And Step 3, adjust using external data. In practice, this means strictly benchmarking our depots against total turnaround service level agreements to uncover our true efficiency. We absolutely have to force ourselves to use this data because our internal intuition is just naturally wired to be overly optimistic and neglect base rates.
Part 3. High-stakes chemical logistics.
Let's ground these theories in reality by looking at a real-world incident report from a depot stacked up against standard safety guidelines. Normally, the safety data sheets dictate that a tank carrying breathing cargoes should be filled to about 80 to 85%, kept well under 20 degrees Celsius, and needs a minimum of 20 centimeters of headspace just for gas expansion. But look at what actually happened in this incident. The human planners filled the tank to over 91%, they allowed the temperature to climb past 20 degrees, and they left insufficient headspace. They fell right into the YSAI trap. They were so hyper-focused on maximizing the payload in front of them that they completely ignored the invisible physical realities of the cargo.
And, well, nature and physics do not care about human oversight. The anaerobic biomass inside that tank just did what it naturally does. It produced biogas, dangerous stuff like methane, hydrogen sulfide, and carbon dioxide. Because the outside temperature was allowed to spike up to 37 degrees Celsius, this whole biological process accelerated exponentially. And remember, they overfilled it. There was literally zero room for the gas to expand, which caused a massive internal pressure buildup. It is a perfect, terrifying example of how our inability to track unseen physical changes leads straight to catastrophic, cascading failures.
Honestly, the burden of managing these risks in the manual era is just immense. Before cargo is even approved to move, humans have to manually evaluate vapor pressure at 50 degrees Celsius, toxicity, corrosivity, water reactivity, and operating temperatures. You know what's wild? The source data notes that most tank damage incidents are actually material failures, not even dangerous goods failures. Human error in these manual checks almost always creeps in. But even when disaster is narrowly avoided, this manual process creates unbelievable depot latency. It acts like a giant anchor, absolutely crushing asset velocity and capital efficiency.
Part 4. The 0 to 1 shift.
Let's bring Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 framework back into the mix. He maps out the future progress on two very distinct axes. On the horizontal axis, you have horizontal progress. In logistics, this is literally just buying more tanks to meet demand. But on the vertical axis, you have vertical progress. This is where we get into the math of velocity. It's the strategy of reducing cycle time so drastically that you basically create the equivalent capacity of new tanks without spending a single dollar to actually buy them. It perfectly captures the difference between merely iterating on the present versus truly inventing the future.
Let's break that down just a bit more. Horizontal progress is going from 1 to n. It's copying things that already work. On a macro level, the word for this is globalization, taking a process and just spreading it everywhere. But vertical progress, that is going from 0 to 1. That means doing something nobody else has ever done. Thiel's philosophy is that true technology does more with less. A 0 to 1 leap in logistics doesn't just copy old, slow processes, it actually increases your net yield per asset day, allowing you to do exponentially more with the exact same physical footprints.
Part 5. The Smart Tank Revolution.
Think about the manual era. For decades, an ISO tank was literally just a passive steel cylinder. Operations meant human workers walking up to the tank, reading analog dials, risking slip and fall hazards on top walkways just to check the pressure, and writing it all down on paper manifests. It was slow and reactive. Now, welcome to the smart tank era. We're talking digital transmitters, AI analytics, and global telematics. This tech completely eliminates depot latency by giving us real-time, proactive oversight. It is a total transition from a labor-intensive, reactive past to a highly connected and wildly efficient future.
So what does the hardware of this 0 to 1 shift actually look like? Well, we are talking about highly specialized Internet of Things sensors engineered specifically for extreme, hazardous environments. They are fully ATEX Zone 1 and 21 certified. These tanks are now rigged with solar-powered GPS telematics, non-intrusive temperature sensors that can literally read right through the steel shell, digital internal pressure transmitters, and even 3-axis shock detection accelerometers. This means we finally have continuous, high-precision monitoring of the physical matter. It keeps humans completely out of harm's way while generating the exact, hard data we need to accurately track our true net yield per asset day. But you know the hardware is really only half the story. The magic happens when you connect it all to the cloud and unlock artificial intelligence. This shifts the entire industry from reactive logging to predictive management. Instead of just staring at endless data, dispatchers operate via management by exception. Basically, they only get alerted when parameters start crossing safe thresholds. AI algorithms can now analyze live temperature gradients and spot subtle exothermic microtrends hours before a runaway reaction or polymerization even happens. We've effectively bypassed our human cognitive limits and dismantled that YZAIT trap entirely. We aren't just preventing disasters, we are mathematically optimizing asset velocity at a massive global scale. As we've seen, injecting digital intelligence into physical assets actually solves our most dangerous human limitations. It transforms these isolated steel containers into a transparent, ultra-safe, and incredibly capital-efficient logistical network, which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to chew on. If completely removing the human element redefines our physical safety and asset velocity in something as complex as hazardous logistics, what other massive physical industries around us are just desperately waiting for their 0 to 1 moment? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and keep looking for that next paradigm shift.